Hello Internet, it's Skorkowski, and today I want to discuss one of the more destructive philosophies that I've encountered in gaming, and that's the idea that a role-playing game is or should be player versus game master, meaning that either the player and or the game master is approaching the game with the notion of trying to beat the other side. I never personally considered this a thing until I'd been playing for several years, and then I met with a player who said, "It is a player's duty to screw over the GM before the GM can do it to them first." And this wasn't said by somebody who was new to gaming. No, this was said by somebody with years and years of tabletop experience, more than I had, and it is a terrible concept. Now, some of you might be asking, didn't he cover this topic already? And yes, this was one of my very first topics that I did when I started my channel over 2 years ago. However, the audio quality on it was just absolutely terrible. It was painful for me to listen to, so I'm just going to re-record it, as well as be able to add a little bit of information now that I've been doing this channel for a while, because I've been able to make an observation as far as people that say they are not player versus game master, but then comments that they give or behavior that they exhibit shows otherwise. I will mention that one common thread with people that I've encountered that have this philosophy is that very rarely are they in an active gaming group. They always seem to be between groups, if you catch my meaning. Now, I've already discussed the RPG social contract on a previous video. I refer back to it very regularly. And one of the core parts of that is that a game master should keep as their highest priority that their players have a very good time during the gaming session. And in return, the players should make sure that the game master and the other players at the game are also having a good time as well. And this isn't some sort of, sha-na-na, let's all hold hands sort of thing. No, this is a very self-serving mindset to ensure a long-lasting game group. It is entirely selfish, but this is a way that everybody is happy and we can keep playing. Now, a game master that does not entertain their players is going to soon find out that they don't have any players to play with. And a player that doesn't ensure that the game master and the other players at the table are having a good time is soon going to find that they have nobody left to play with. This shouldn't be a very difficult thing to grasp. In my social contract video, I also mentioned that scheduling and preparing for the game is also one of the things that's primarily the game master's responsibility. And from my own personal experience, if we have a great game, I'm very quickly going to start scheduling that next one. I'm going to start working on it because I'm very excited and I'm very pumped to get back to the next session. However, if I have a game that is not fun for whatever reason it is, I'm going to start finding myself lacking the motivation maybe to schedule that next game or start working on the next part of the game or getting everything ready for everybody. And it's not intentional. It's just that my brain is looking at it from a point of view of like, hey, we could do something a little bit more fun than that. Like maybe I could watch a movie or play a video game or get back to my writing. But my brain isn't going to immediately say, now we need to schedule and prepare for the next game. Now, game masters, the same thing applies to players. If a player doesn't enjoy a game, it's going to become harder and harder for them to find the motivation to adjust their schedules around when that next game is going to be if you're not upholding your end of the job and trying to ensure that they have a good time during a session. Remember, every single player at your table has a life of their own. They have interests and other responsibilities and other things that they're going to have to work around if they want to be able to make it to the next game. So if they are having a good time, it becomes easier for them to make gaming a priority that other things then kind of fit around. However, if they're not having a good time in a game, it's going to become harder and harder for that game to become the central priority that other things are fitting around, and all of a sudden it's harder and harder for them to make the game. And this doesn't have to be intentional on their part. This is just a subconscious thing that human beings do. So if either party is approaching the game that they should beat the other side and they should win against the other side at the expense of their enjoyment, then ultimately what they're doing is they're sabotaging a long-term gaming relationship with everybody else. Another aspect that's just as dangerous as playing game master versus player is to play paranoid, convinced that the other side is out to get you and every bad thing that befalls your character or the adventure is merely the other side trying to get you. This becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because even subconsciously you begin playing offensively as a response to this. So for anyone that doesn't already know this, the game master wants the players to succeed in the adventure. They're rooting for them to win. One, if the game master wipes out or kills all the player characters, then they're never going to see the rest of that sweet, sweet adventure that they had prepared for them. The game master worked hard on that adventure or that setting, so why should they wipe out the party before they themselves get to see the end of it? It'd be like if the game master decided to cook the players a meal, and they spent all day smoking and seasoning it to perfection. I'm Texan, so I'm required by state law to use barbecue in all my food examples. But then after hours of hard work and money spent, they ultimately throw that cooked food on the ground and stomp on it and say, "Ha ha, I win." Now, I do know that there are some game masters out there who have spent countless hours building their world and getting everything ready for the players, only to sabotage it and wipe out the players in some sort of attempt to beat them at it, but those are really just a crazy few who are soon going to be wondering why nobody wants to play with them anymore. Most game masters out there put that much work into building their game world and their adventure, their setting, or everything like that. They're not just going to turn around and wipe out the party before anybody gets to enjoy that creation. It doesn't make sense. And two, the game master is essentially God of this little fantasy world that they were all enjoying together. They're holding all the cards and they could destroy the party at will if they wanted to. A player cannot beat a game master, and a game master really can't find any challenge or reward in trying to beat the players. Now, just because a game master wants the characters to ultimately triumph and the players to have a good time, this in no way means that they should never kill or defeat any of the player characters. It's a simple risk versus reward mentality. If the player characters have no risk, then the reward isn't as satisfying once they achieve it. So a game master should challenge the players and the player characters. They should put them at risk, but only because that they're hoping that the player characters are going to overcome that obstacle and triumph. I've accidentally killed a lot of player characters in my time, and it can really suck. I try not to, but sometimes it was the player's fault. Sometimes I miscalculated the situation. I wasn't able to correct it until after it was too late. Most often, though, it's just a couple bad dice rolls. After all, these are the real enemy. And while yes, I have employed divine resurrections and other means of bringing player characters back, it starts running the dangerous risk of removing all the risk from the game if you overdo this. See my 7 deadly game master sins for more about too often use of resurrections. After all, what reason does a player character have to try hard if they know that the game master is just going to simply bring them back if they fail as if nothing had ever happened? A significant part of role-playing games is the story, and things very rarely go well for the characters in our favorite stories. Luke Skywalker is a classic hero, we all know him, but Luke lost his family, got his face mauled by an ice monster, had his hand chopped off, found out that the girl that he liked was totally off limits, and very nearly lost his soul to the dark side. But those setbacks only sweetened our enjoyment of a story. It wasn't that George Lucas was trying to beat him. So a game master should put the PCs through a few ringers, take away their favorite gear, destroy their stronghold, give them some gnarly scars, but that's not because the game master is trying to defeat the player character, it's that the game master is wanting the player character to rise. So you're saying that they're not necessarily trying to beat me, it's that they're trying to give me an exciting and challenging adventure? Exactly. Once again, the most important part of the game is that everyone is having a good time. That's why we're even gaming to begin with. So even if a player character dies or the game master's big plan in their campaign gets completely thrown out of whack, as long as everyone understands that this isn't personal and it isn't intentional and we're all approaching it with the mindset of everybody having a good time, everyone will have a good time. I've had an accidental total party kill completely destroy my campaign. A few bad dice rolls can do that, but it still ended up being a very, very fun session. We all enjoyed it, despite the fact that on paper we all lost. So both players and game masters out there, remember that you're in this together. Together you are making a story, and those victories and defeats, those should all be inside the game, not around the gaming table. Now, in the past few years that I've been doing this channel, most people have agreed with this philosophy. I mean, I don't know if these 5 people disagreed with me or they just hated the video, which again kind of sucked, but most, as you can see, agree with it. That's awesome. However, I've also noticed a very different trend that says otherwise. Every so often I've done a video about the 5 worst player mistakes or 7 deadly game master sins, and those really just poke fun at some of the specific bad behaviors that occur on one side of the screen or the other. But one thing that I've seen is that when I've pointed out player mistakes in different videos, there is a small but very vocal group of people who inevitably run to the player's defense with comments that boil down to this blanket mindset that anything that a player does wrong is in truth really just the game master doing something wrong. Now, while we could all sit down and come up with some sort of case-by-case scenario or just about any sort of bad player behavior we could link to ultimately being the fault of the game master for allowing that to happen or allowing that to become a response that they have, but that is not the way that they're approaching it. These are people who are saying that the game master is some sort of perfect god, and any errors or bad behavior that occur on the player's side is ultimately the game master's fault, and that the players are somehow blameless in all of this. Now, on the flip side, and while I can't say that it's never happened, I just can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but whenever I've done any of my Game Master Sins videos, I haven't had any sort of comments that anything that the Game Master does wrong is really just the player's fault. So it's a very big noticeable change between them. Now, I'm not saying I've never encountered that argument. I certainly have. I've encountered it in Reddit threads. I've encountered it in talking to various game masters. So there definitely is a few game masters out there who blame any shortcomings on their side of the screen to really, in truth, be the fault of the players, shirking any responsibility from themselves in this whole endeavor. The problem with that blanket mindset of my side is doing nothing wrong, that any problems that happen in the game are really the fault of the person on the opposite side of the screen from me, is that it is a player versus game master mindset. So people out there who have agreed that game master versus player, or player versus game master, however which way you wanted to put it, is a bad thing, but then will immediately turn around and blanket defend any problems that happen in the game as being solely the responsibility of the other side. It's like when somebody says to you, you know, I'm not a sexist, but... So on the surface, while we might all know that something is wrong and we shouldn't do something, deep down we might not behave that way. And as long as both players and game masters continue to behave this way, we're still feeding the problem of this sort of toxic mentality while simultaneously blinding ourselves as far as our own involvement in a player versus game master mindset. So if you agree that GM versus player or player versus game master is a bad thing to do, then you need to make sure that you make an effort to practice that. Because players, if a game master does do something wrong, the correct response is not to make a bad situation worse by feeling justified and suddenly playing like a dick and trying to destroy the game or something in some idea that you can beat them or punish them. And it's worse when a game master does this. So game masters, let's say you have 5 players out there and one of them is doing something bad, and the game master is responding by just being an asshat to all the players and trying to dominate them or punish the whole party. That is going to quickly sink the game, and nobody is having fun, and we're all blaming each other for it. Nobody's taking responsibility for what their side did. Gaming is a group effort, and anyone in that group is trying to beat the other or trying to punish the other through the game by showing their dominance. No matter what justification you have, everyone is going to lose. We gather together to play these games to have fun. We're either playing with our friends or we're forging new friendships around the gaming table, and while challenging each other is certainly encouraged, and that is definitely part of the game, we should all be helping each other have a good time. And the only part of the game that's actually out there to beat you or punish you or ruin your good time is the truest enemy of them all, your dice.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our videos, just game reviews and Game Master Toolbox, just hit that subscribe button. Until next time, amigos, stay awesome.